Hi everybody, it's Rachel here. I decided to make this video of part 2, at least the lecture part for all of you who missed part 2 on Friday night at Hadasana. So this won't include the yin class or the SOAS release or the 3 Wisdom Realms meditation. This is just going to be the lecture portion, but at least you'll be all caught up for this Friday, because a lot of you who missed Friday night because of the snowstorm are signed in for this Friday and got that 3-pack. So I really wanted you guys to be able to have all the information that you needed, so you felt comfortable, still participating Friday night and having everything that you need. So in this video, I'm going to give you the lecture portion and go into as much depth as I possibly can. And then I want you to follow along with your packets that I will include in this email with the link to the video that I'm sending you, so that you have the opportunity to still take notes and follow along. You can print out this packet or you can grab your packet from me on Friday night. I'll have all of the copies ready for you in my folder so I can give you the printout of it on Friday. So I think what I'm gonna do is in January, when things kind of mellow out a little bit after the holidays, I'm gonna be doing I don't wanna say makeup class, but I'm going to do a yin workshop that includes myofascial and the SOAS release. So, and I'll include the 3 Wisdom Realms meditation in that class, and I will let you all know when that is, so you can all participate and come to that workshop. I know that you missed out with all of this on Friday night, but I want you to have another opportunity to go to all of that and feel it within your body, everything that we're kind of talking about and going through. So keep your eyes peeled. That'll be in January on a Friday night at some point through the month. I'm still kind of working with Sarah on the details on that, okay? All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to read that first reading on the first page, Threshold. Be taught now among the trees and rocks how the discarded is woven into shelter. Learn the way things hidden and unspoken slowly proclaim their voice in the world. Find that far inward symmetry to all outward appearances. Apprentice yourself to yourself. Begin to come back all you sent away. Be a new annunciation. Find the words you always wanted to say and stay at the door of the day and be hospitable, even to the stranger in you. That's an excerpt from Coleman's Bend and River Flow. You can see the copyright at the bottom of your page. I loved the end of this poem. I mean, the whole thing is really beautiful, but stay at the door of the day and be hospitable, even to the stranger in you. I think this really speaks to our newness every day. Every day we are different than the day before because of everything we experienced the day before in our lives. And some days are bigger than others. There's a lot that happens in a day, and sometimes they're a bit more monotonous and we just have a normal work day, normal interactions with our kids, our partners, our friends, or on our own. But some days, a lot of shit happens. So I just really love that, to be hospitable even to the stranger in you. I think just giving yourself grace each new day that arises, giving yourself grace for what you've experienced the day before and how new you are in that moment, waking up and experiencing. So yeah, I just really, really loved that part of things. Okay, so before we get into IFS, I'm going to come into a kind of a recap and kind of little prelude before we get into IFS. So trauma is just as much about overcoming with resiliency as to the imprint it leaves in the present moment, right? So when we experience a trauma in our bodies, it leaves that imprint into the present moment. We still have the effects of the trauma on our brains, on our hearts, on our bodies physically, and that brings it into the present moment, even though our trauma occurred in the past. Trauma, that first wave of experience, remember we talked about the first and second wave of experience in our first session together. The first wave being the input, what's happening right now, and the second wave of experience being your response to the input, and us basically being in a state of judgment constantly within our bodies through those two waves of experience at all times. So trauma, the first wave of experience, also includes the time span of the present moment, the imprint it continues to have. There is a timeline of endurance. It informs the second wave of experience. Okay, so basically, essentially, your trauma affects that second wave, that response, right? Our reaction, our response to what it is that's happening in front of us. So this is why we have our slide and glide movement. You guys experienced some of this in our yin practice in the first session, where sorry, I've got my two labs sitting next to me, so if you hear any dog noises, it's just them shaking off and licking themselves and huffing and doing all the wonderful things that they do. So we experienced that slide and glide movement when we went from half happy baby, bringing our leg up and out, and then over across into the supine twist, and we kind of flossed that motion back and forth for about 60 seconds to 90 seconds before we took our static hold. So this is helpful when it comes to that effect that trauma has on our second wave of experience, okay? Movement in trauma-informed yin, and then we come into the static shape. We're essentially combing the fascia and then taking the yin pose. Myofascial is so crucial to trauma. What are we holding deep within our tissues, right? So myofascial, I try and do a myofascial yin class, a myofascial release, once a quarter throughout the year. I've done 2 this year so far, so my next one will probably be in February, minus that myofascial psoas specialty class that I'm going to do in January. So myofascial, I use tennis balls and blocks and all of our other yummy props, and basically think of a deep tissue. Think of putting pressure and applying a deeper, more concentrated pinpoint in different pieces of the fascia throughout your body to get a release in those tissues. So myofascial is also really crucial to trauma and to trauma release. So if you see those classes kind of pop up, don't be afraid to sign up for one if you're feeling a little off, or if you think that you're holding some stories a bit deeper within the body, even if you're not sure what exactly they are. Just allowing yourself that space in a myofascial class to release whatever it is that needs to be released. So talk therapy can be effective, however insufficient. I touched on this a little bit through our first part 1 together. There's a huge meta-mindfulness umbrella, right? Of lots of different things that are helpful to you, and everyone's recipe is different, and it's important that we don't judge other people for their recipe, whether that be talk therapy, going for a run, a little bit of medication if they need it for whatever, and then taking some yin classes or taking some yoga classes, maybe a little bit of pranayama mixed in with that breath work, you know. There is a big mindfulness umbrella. But if you're just doing one of those things, like if you're one of those people who goes for runs and that's all you do, or you become like a gym junkie and you're just working out constantly working out, pushing weights, lifting weights, you know, doing cardio, high adrenaline stuff, high intensity stuff, you know, what are you doing to counter that? So talk therapy is just one tool under the mindfulness umbrella, and it's really important that when we're dealing with things like trauma, that we are combating it from all angles, and we're using a lot of different tools in our toolbox to help ourselves combat that, okay? To tell the story, we need the fascial work for the physical, chemical, and hormonal response. There is a chemical imprint of what's being blocked. So parts of us remain hypervigilant, staying constantly prepared for an attack. We need to soften again into the big mind to know that that particular danger has passed, okay? So if you've experienced, let's say a car accident, right? So different situation in cars are going to make you hypervigilant. I've been in a lot of car accidents in the snow when I wasn't driving, and so I feel like driving in the snow these last few days, the snowstorm, my body was very hypervigilant, and I could feel my shoulders kind of tightening up, my neck tightening up, my arms locking out a little bit. And, you know, I'll get into how I dealt with that later once we've talked about IFS. But there were parts of me that remained hypervigilant because of my trauma and car accidents. And I used different tools that we're going to go through right now through IFS to soften into the experience and to observe and be curious about the sensations I was having rather than judgmental and falling to pieces in those moments. But doing what I needed to do and addressing those parts of myself as they unfolded while I was driving through the snow, and asking myself what I needed in that moment to get through it, okay, which we're going to get into with IFS. That's what we're kind of talking about a little bit more of today. So we still haven't gotten into the first page of your packet. This is just my key on the discussion portion of what I'm giving you guys today. We must create new waves of experience without the equanimity. So to sort of counter those traumas, creating a safe space within some of those fields to allow the new waves of experience. So driving safely through the snow for me and having that be a positive experience rather than a scary, terrifying experience to kind of counter the trauma in the car. Creating new waves of experience of safety in those environments can be really key to pushing through some of those traumas. Okay, clearing the view of perception or defogging the lens. I love this visual, defogging the lens. You know, meditation, pranayama, yin yoga, going for a run, you know, all these tools that we have under our mindfulness umbrella, they defog the lens. Trauma fogs it up. You know, trauma takes away our clarity quite a bit. Because our responses aren't clear. Our responses are in shock, they are jolted. Mindfulness is a direct registration as to what's happening right now. Trauma survivors are essentially opening our window for tolerance wider and bigger and bigger. Meta-mindfulness helps us to widen that window or even open that window for tolerance. So we touched on that a little bit last week, widening our window for tolerance, and essentially having that be a key to be less rigid, to find more fluidity in our experiences that we are having here in our lives, and how important that is to widen our window continuously every day, you know, teaching the body how to tolerate discomfort, teaching the body how to tolerate so that we can have a widened window to experience new waves of discomfort, of what is yet to come. Yeah. Essentially holding a pose and then releasing a pose, we are turning off the amygdala, right? So we talked about the amygdala last week inside the brain, our siren, our ambulance siren that goes, hey, something's wrong, and notifying the rest of the body. So holding a pose, then releasing a pose, we are turning off the amygdala, helping to bring closure to the body. And that's why, you know, yin is so effective and purposeful when it comes to relieving some of the trauma in the body physically, because we are turning off that amygdala switch. We are letting the body know it's safe to turn that siren off. And maybe after enough practice, the body will start to regulate again. The body will start to find a new baseline for tranquility. So a side note, alcohol, weed, TV, any addictions are us dwelling in the insula. The insula we talked about again last week, which was like the insulation. I like to think of insula as insulation. In the picture in your packet, in our first packet, the insula kind of surrounds the brain like this padding, okay? So us dwelling in that space of the brain, that is kind of where addiction takes place in the brain. Yoga Nidra is specifically used for alkalining the insula function. So Yoga Nidra is another really incredible tool. I've used it a lot for grief therapy and addiction recovery. It's an ancient practice that was kind of brought bigger into our side of the world after the war on Afghanistan and Iraq, for treating PTSD and war vets. And through that avenue, it became useful for sleep apnea, anxiety, depression. Yeah, and I started using it recently these last few years with grief clients. I had a few private clients that were, suffering really deep losses of death in their lives of close people, their partner, their sister, and they were really suffering. They were not able to go to work. They were not able to function and get through their day. And talk therapy, again, although an effective tool, leaving work on their lunch break to go to talk therapy and falling to pieces, crying for an hour, they were unable to go back to work and finish their day. So although that was effective, it was insufficient, for their needs. And they didn't want to do the warrior two and the reverse warrior and extended side angle. They didn't want to move around a lot. They were crying and suffering and grieving this immense loss. And that takes time, right? And unfortunately, time is not a commodity that we like to give ourselves. And so I started doing yoga nidra with both of them. And after 4 weeks of doing 1 a week or 2 a week in the mornings before their day, they started feeling better. And it wasn't feeling better about their grief. It was rewiring the brain on the inside and helping their nervous system with the shock, with the response that their brain was having on their grief, that they were able to function and they were able to cope and successfully get through their day. So this wasn't just like a magic button yoga nidra. It was a process of rebuilding neural pathways in the brain to feel safe again, to get through the day and get from point A to point B to point C, right? They have an amazing, incredible app that's free called Insight Timer. They have a lot of great yoga nidras on there. If you'd like to try one in the safety and comfort of your own home. My next yoga nidra is Monday, November 26th. I try and do them once a month at Roots of Luna studio that's run by my best friend, Katie. It's off of Cascade, close to downtown. It's more in Old North End. And I offer them once a month. I try and do them at the end of the month. And they're about an hour long with a 10-minute Shavasana and a 5-minute intro. So about 45 minutes of meditation. You're laying down the entire time. Okay, so a very comfortable experience as far as laying down and not sitting up in a seated meditation, right? Meditation can be scary for a lot of people. So yoga nidra is a really beautiful way to kind of ease into, sitting up for 5 minutes in meditation. So I encourage you all to try that if you're really having trouble with some of these things in the insula function, but also just another good mindfulness tool to help the body recover from trauma of any kind. All right, let's get into IFS. So IFS was developed by Richard Schwartz, and he has a great book on it. I have not read the book, but all the information that I am giving you that is just scratching the surface on IFS, I got through Kali Durga up in Boulder at the Star House, where I took my anatomy of trauma teacher training at. So she's a great resource. I know that she does IFS immersion trainings, IFS immersion, it's not a training, it's like an experience, like for you to learn about IFS and kind of submerge yourself in it. And I think her next one is coming up here soon. They're about 3 months long, and I believe that it's all online with her live through Zoom or something like that. And she does private sessions as well. She recommends a minimum of 3 sessions to really get into some of the deeper work internally. But IFS is very productive. Okay, so it moves a little bit quicker than talk therapy. IFS is very direct. It's just a very direct link into the self. So If you look up Kali Durga, Kalidurga, or Bozeman is her married name, up in Boulder, you'll find her website pretty easily. She's pretty well known in the community of yoga and such. And she has yin immersions, she has IFS private sessions, and then she does those IFS immersions that are like 3 months long. So if you go through this with me today and you want more, go through her. I would really recommend her. But also I got all my information from her, and she got all of her information from Richard Schwartz, who developed IFS. Okay. So IFS, internal family systems, is essentially our exiles, the parts of ourselves that host the parts that we don't like about ourselves, integrating them into our systems with a bigger window, into our hara, our island of safety, which I'm going to go over after IFS. We have a wide array of stories that we continuously carry. There are 2 prongs here, purpose and method, that we're going to go through. So you'll see under purpose, our first prong, to not avoid the challenging aspects of the self, right? It can be so easy to, or not easy necessarily, but tempting to avoid things that make us uncomfortable, parts of ourselves that we don't like, we want to shy away from and avoid, right? So the purpose, the why, and then the method. Purpose, to avoid the exiles, the challenging aspects of ourselves. Parts and self, or big mind and little mind. The parts are where we are doing the human dance, so to speak. These parts learn skills. Our parts make our human experience more vibrant. The self cannot be born, die, or break. The parts are born into relationships to self. Parts make us disjointed. Therefore, we hold the pain of what we experience. IFS purpose reintegrates the parts back into the stream. Our parts, it's important to know that all these parts of ourselves are where we hold our limiting beliefs. Okay, so this is where we hold our neglect, our abandonment, right? Those limiting beliefs that we have within us, those are held in our smaller parts. The self, the big ass self, is the sun right in the middle of the galaxy, okay? So your parts are the stars and the solar system. I love this analogy, this visualization, right? And how big is the sun? How strong is the sun? The stars have their purpose as well, but they are very small comparatively to the sun. And the sun has a lot of power. So I really like this way of looking at all of this, reminding yourself how amazing you are, how big you are, how bright you are, how powerful you are against those smaller parts that you might not like about yourself. So hara, which hara is the Japanese word for belly, just to give you like a visualization of the hara. Hara is the energetic region that we let the parts back in. We bring them home. The heart of integration lies in the hara. Sankalpa is a great tool to integrate parts into self. So Sankalpa, I think we touched a little bit on this in part 1, but I'll just refresh a little bit for a moment. Sankalpa is your deepest desire for yourself, and this isn't a tangible desire like a car or clothes or anything like that. This is the deepest desire that you have for yourself. So my old Sankalpa that I had for 5 years that I developed in my yoga teacher training was I am love, I am infinite, I am safe, and I am whole, okay? I had a lot of issues surrounding loving myself. I had, suicidal thoughts occasionally when I was really suffering in my deeper realms of depression. And knowing that I was capable of an infinite amount of those emotions really was a light bulb moment for me within that Sankalpa, that I needed to know that I was infinite at all times, so that I was able to get through any situation, knowing that suicide wasn't part of the situation anymore. That wasn't an option. I am fully capable of handling an infinite amount of anger, an infinite amount of sorrow, of sadness, of grief, of joy, of good things as well. And then I am safe. Safety is a really big thing for me. I've been in a lot of unsafe situations growing up, and so safety was important for my body to relearn, and I needed to reintegrate that safety back into my system. And then wholeness, finding wholeness with all these pieces of myself, right? Parts that I don't like about myself, parts that I do like about myself, finding that wholeness. So that was my Sankalpa for 5 years. And I remember, because I teach a lot of yoga classes every week. When I open each yoga class, we set our intention for the class or say our own Sankalpa in that moment. And then when I seal each practice at the very, very end, coming out of Shavasana, Ellie, hey, easy. When we come out of Shavasana and seal out our practice, we repeat our Sankalpa just to close out the practice. So I got really used to saying this to myself every morning when I woke up, every night when I go to bed, when I can't sleep, when I'm having a moment, when I open each class, when I close each class, when I practice on my own and open and close my own practice. So this was a really big part of my life, this Sankalpa statement. And I'm gonna lay on all my papers, Ellie. And last year I had a moment where I was sealing out a class, and I said my Sankalpa to myself, and I kind of thought, wow, I don't feel anything when I say this anymore. This used to bring me to tears. This was such a huge, thing for me to say to myself, because I needed these things so badly. And after 5 years of that much work of repeating it over and over and over again, I realized that I needed a new Sankalpa, because I had accomplished those feelings. I had accomplished those things in my heart and in my mind and in my soul. And it was just kind of a moment, right, of like, that's interesting. Okay, well now I better get to work on the next one. And I have a new Sankalpa now that, a product of that old Sankalpa has pushed me into a new space of what it is that I need now. And I couldn't do what I am saying to myself now until I felt those other things. So, take your time writing a Sankalpa, take time to journal about what your needs are, and go deep with it, go really deep, and then commit to it for a long period of time. These things don't just happen overnight. It took 5 years, and it might not take 5 years for you, but that was a really hearty amount of time that I gave my Sankalpa, and it worked. And I really believe in mantra and the power of our intention, especially towards oneself. So that is Sankalpa just in a nutshell, and it's a great tool to integrate all these small parts into our big S self. So the stars into your big sun, your big, beautiful, shiny sun. All right. Unresolved sorrows and the grief that they hold, and giving love and space in a way, becoming our own mothers. I had in one of my lectures about this, someone kind of bring up the idea of, instead of mothers and fathers, because, it felt a little sexist just saying mothers. So take this, what I'm saying, and integrate it in your own way. Try not to read too much into the mother thing. Just, you understand that nurturing aspect of what a mother is supposed to be for you, keeping you safe and nurturing. So yeah, this is a really beautiful way to become your own mother, mothering aspects that weren't attended to when we needed them to be. Okay, so I had a difficult relationship with my mom for a little while. I really felt like she didn't keep me safe enough as a child, and there was a lot of blame there, and there was a lot of hurt. And my father passed away when I was younger from brain cancer. So I did have a stepdad, or I have a stepdad, but we had a difficult relationship as well. And so I found as an adult, getting into relationships with people, with partners, and with friends, you know, there was a really big part of me seeking that need that I would get from my parents from them. And I'm not gonna lie, I feel like it really affected some of my intimate relationships with my partners, having expectations of them that were perhaps not quite right. And, you know, looking at it from the lens now of all of this knowledge and having the tools to become my own parents, has been a really beautiful thing for me personally. And I hope that you can, once again, take this into your own life and integrate it in your own way, because you guys all have different situations going on. But I don't know, when I learned about this, I was like, wow, okay, like, once again, just putting it on me. And, you know, I can be my own mom and my own dad. I can do that for myself now. I don't need anybody else to do that for me. It's nice to have certain people support you in different ways in your life, but this is a really beautiful way of becoming that all on your own and feeling safe in that place of doing that for yourself and attending to the needs of your inner child, attending to the parts of yourself that perhaps weren't attended to from your caregivers growing up, or that you feel like weren't. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. And I hope you guys are jotting down any questions throughout this video that you might have in your packets throughout the video. And you can ask me them on Friday when I see you in a few days, hopefully. Okay? All right. When we are wounded as a child, we are frozen. And then we're growing up too fast in other ways. So when something traumatizing happens and we're in our younger stages of building our foundation, we freeze in certain aspects of our growth, but our bodies keep growing. Our experiences keep deepening. You know, we still grow up very quickly, and we kind of grow up too fast in this other way, while parts of us are frozen still. And that's what trauma can do to us as children and through our more developmental stages of life. When we don't receive the unconditional love and attention that we deserve, we think, what's wrong with me? It becomes easier to make it about ourselves than our caretakers. These are unattended areas of the psyche. So when we're young, we don't have the capabilities in our brain to necessarily put blame in the right place. And it's just much easier and more natural for us as children to say, what's wrong with me? Or even as adults. I mean, shit. Like, there's a lot of times we take accountability and responsibility for situations that weren't our fault. A lot, actually. And as women in particular, and maybe men out there would disagree with me because maybe they feel this in a different way of responsibility that I don't know about because I'm a woman, but I feel like as women, we take a lot of bullshit, and we accept a lot of behaviors in certain situations. And sometimes we blame ourselves for some of the bad things that happen to us, physically, sexually, you know, this kind of thing is what I'm referring to. And, you know, sometimes that's easier, to grasp the situation and to grapple the situation. And that is what trauma essentially does to the system. At the age of 7, we start to understand what hurts us or what doesn't hurt us. That's why we must tend to ourselves with such patience and tenderness. This is why Hara is sometimes called our grandmother's lap. Now take that again with a grain of salt. Some of you guys might have trauma with your grandparents, and I don't want to trigger that part of you. So if grandmother's lap is rubbing you the wrong way, just take that out of the equation. Okay, Hara, your island of safety. That's it. All right. So when it comes to that patience and tenderness with ourselves, it's almost like, you know, okay, I'll give you this example. So I'm having dinner with my best friend. She's over for dinner. I've got 2 kids. They're 10 and 11 right now. And I'm having a glass of wine. We're eating dinner. I've already given the kids everything that they need. Like food and their dinner and everything. We've done homework. Like they're good to go, right? And I'm doing this in advance so that I can sit with my friend and have a conversation with her. And then it's the hey mommies. Hey mommy. Hey mommy. Hey mommy. Hey mommy. Like I call them the hey mommies because that's all my kids say when they need something. Hey mommy. And, you know, normally you're not just going to turn around and snap at them and freak out at them. You're going to go, hey, is this an emergency? Okay, well then let me finish this conversation and I'll be with you in a few minutes. Or what do you need, sweetheart? Right? So that's how we're talking to our children. We're not like freaking out on them. I mean, unless it's the 50th hey mommy and maybe, you know, you've reached your limit of how can I help you, sweetheart? And that's fine too. But my point is that when you are working on that reintegration of your small parts to your big S self, it's really important that you find that patience and tenderness like you would a child, because most of these stories that lie deep within the depths of our being, our children are younger than we are right now. And that's not always the case, but a lot of our deeper stories that lie within us are a very young person. And I think that that's just important to tread very lightly in those situations with yourself, because I think you'll have better results speaking to yourself in a very kind way and being more gentle-hearted about it like you would with a small child. What can I do for you, sweetheart? How can I help you? You know, rather than what the fuck is wrong with you? Why are you freaking out about this right now? You know, I've said that to myself in moments when I've been overreacting or freaking out, and I didn't have that patience or the knowledge or these tools yet to look deep within my parts of my system and go, where is this story lying in your body? What is it telling you right now? Where is this coming from? Well, you're driving in the snow, you're hypervigilant, you're starting to freak out because you were in your first car accident when you were 8 or 9, and it scared you and you almost died and it was terrifying, and that still lives within your body. Okay, so now what do you need, sweetheart? Well, I could turn on the music to help me mellow out. I love music. I love healing vibrational tones in music. They make me feel better and kind of calm down. I could pull over, take a break, take a breather. I could have someone come and pick me up if I'm really that freaked out. I could call my partner for some comforting words, or maybe even my mom, and talk with her for a little while to distract me and get my mind off of what's going on. You know, it's that, what do you need, sweetheart, now? Instead of judgment and criticism, what the fuck is wrong with you? This happened so long ago. Why are you freaking out right now? Da 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 da. Like all these internal thoughts as a 36-year-old woman that I would normally have. Well, no, that part of yourself is 8 that got in that car accident that still lives within you. And that is why you're freaking out. That's why you're hypervigilant. So maybe have a conversation with that little girl and see what she needs in this moment to feel better, right? Hopefully that makes sense. We are cultivating parts to self through meta mindfulness. We are having the courage to see what's there, to share that, not to indulge in a narrative, but to listen to all of our parts. We are seeing what's here and what to give allegiance to. It's an uphill battle, or we can widen our window for tolerance. I love that. Not to indulge in a narrative, but to decide what we want to give our allegiance to. I just love that. That's such a great phrase and way of putting it. I'm not listening to that 8-year-old girl who was in the car accident, you know, to indulge her. I'm trying to problem solve here. I'm trying to figure this out and heal and bring closure to these issues. And I don't want to show allegiance to that 36-year-old woman freaking out in the car about the snow. I want to show allegiance to that 8-year-old who is suffering still within me in a small part. Okay? All right. Our parts typically hang out in the heart and in the mind. So here and here, and we invite all parts in. We practice our states until they become traits through meta mindfulness. We must untangle who our exiles are. So we are practicing all these states of peace, of calm, of integration, of contentment. We are practicing in yin yoga some of these traits that we want to eventually embody. We are creating this new backbone of stabilization within ourselves through these meta mindfulness practices. And that word practice is so important, right? Because there's going to be practices that feel more successful than others and some that don't feel successful at all, right? Some of this work I find can feel like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, or 5 steps forward, 8 steps back. Sometimes this work can bounce around a little bit. And it's important that through that period, you meet yourself with patience, with grace, and consistency of practice. When things don't go the way we want them to go, it can be so tempting to just let go of those things and not do them because we were uncomfortable or they made us upset in some way, shape, or form. And it's really important that you keep encouraging yourself to keep going with these meta mindfulness practices and give them the time and enthusiasm and energy that they deserve to give yourself the best opportunity to heal and bring closure to some of your trauma. Our parts, okay, we already read that. If you find the original parts, the original stories within your body, you can integrate them back into your big S self, integrate them into the stream. The most important thing is that we are greater than all of our parts, right? The sun is greater than the stars. And it's important that you recognize that through your healing journey, is that you are bigger than anything that's ever happened to you, okay? We are partaking in an endless excavation process. And the reason why it's endless is because your life is continuing to go on and on and on every day, and new things are happening each and every day. So this is not just a one and done. This isn't just, one yin class and I'm fixed. It's an endless excavation process. And there might be some periods of time where you cut back on some things because you're feeling pretty good. But a tune-up is always nice, coming in once a month for a yin practice when you've been feeling better for a few years is not a bad idea. Cutting back on your therapy sessions because you're feeling pretty good about life, and then maybe going in once every 3 months for just a tune-up, a check-in. These things are important to kind of keep in the background of our subconscious rather than just letting go of them because we feel better completely. It is an endless excavation process, okay? What are all my parts right now? What parts are present right now? Once that map is created, who needs me right now? What needs my attention right now? What do you need, sweetheart? Right? So I broke that down for you in the snowstorm in the car with my experience, my hypervigilance, recognizing that small part in myself that needed attention. What needs attention right now? How can I figure this out right in this moment, or am I able to figure it out in another moment because it's not safe to do that right now? What do you need, sweetheart? Just being kind to yourself, speaking to yourself like you would a child, essentially, and not with judgment or criticism. Okay, so I think we hit purpose and method. Yes. So method, cultivate self-energy through mindful attention, form a relationship with parts to the self. We just went through all of that in that lecture. Self-energy, we're going to touch on in part 3 on Friday. We're going to really go through all of that quite a bit. So just set that self-energy bit to the side, and we'll get to that next week. Okay. All right. So Hara, the island of safety. So once again, Hara is the Japanese word for belly, and it makes a lot of sense, this whole Hara thing. I used to think the heart was kind of where that integration happened, but our belly, sitting here, letting your belly just rest, the core of your being, the core of your body, relax and soften, where the deepest depths of our body lie, where our root chakra, our sacral chakra lie, that groundedness, that safety, that makes sense that this is where our Hara is. So cultivation of hara, our purpose is to cultivate the subtle body, right? So we have lots of different parts to the subtle body. I like to think about this as interoception, really strengthening that interoception within yourself through these meta mindfulness tools. And that includes the subtle body, the chakra system, just what's happening inside the body, the vayus, the sheaths of the body that we have going on. Our hara is our seat of intentionality, our storehouse of prana, our storehouse of energy, of breath. The site of self-energy, which we're going to talk about self-energy next week, our inner altar. I loved this phrase, inner altar, because I have a yoga space in my room. It's a bunch of plants kind of set out in a U shape or a C shape, and I have vines kind of going up the walls, bigger plants, smaller plants. I have a bench and my salt lamp, and then I have a cart off to the side next to my big lamp, and that cart has my bolsters, my blankets, my blocks, my yoga mats, and it's a rolling cart, so I can take it if I have events different places. So I have this beautiful yoga space, and I absolutely love this sacred space for myself to practice in. I never thought about having that inside of my body, and having your hara be that inner altar can be extremely powerful, a powerful tool, a home within yourself, not externally, internally. Your hara, having an island of safety that you can integrate these small parts into your big S self through, like a filter, okay? And an immovable, unchanging space deep within you for safety. Hara medicine. There are glimpses of stillness in practice where you quiet the mind and soften your belly, and you feel yourself beyond the body of fear, stress, and overwhelm, beyond all of it. There is a space calling to you to see your life, to bow to that presence, becoming aware of yourself. Okay, so really strengthening that interoception within yourself, becoming more aware, cultivating that self-energy, multiplying and deepening that storehouse of prana within yourself. So now we'll talk about the 3 wisdom realms briefly. We're going to do that meditation. I'll walk you through that in January at that workshop if you sign up. Our wisdom realms meditation, 3 wisdom realms, the mind, the heart, and the hara. So essentially, these are our 3 wisdom realms where we do everything from, our guts, our hearts, our minds, and sometimes we can be really overutilizing these spaces and only making decisions from these spaces or choices, and other times we can be underutilizing them. I know that some people make decisions from up here and up here only, and they don't really let their heart kind of come into that equation. And then there's people like me who I make almost all my decisions from my heart, and sometimes I don't think things through very well sometimes. And then my gut, I've always thought about my gut instinct. I have very strong instincts. I have left certain situations before really bad things have happened because I had a bad feeling, and knowing that part of that is my hara, my island of safety that is keeping me safe, was really interesting to kind of learn about that wisdom realm a little bit more. So again, 3 wisdom realms meditation, which I'll walk you through in January at that workshop, but we're going to move on into the psoas, the spirit muscle. So the psoas is one of the biggest pieces of fascia that we have in our body. You can see in your packet here, goes from the T12 behind the spine through the hip canyons down into the groin, kind of attaching just right under the sciatic nerve down there. And then this view I love because you can see how deep within the body the psoas muscle actually is. Right here, it kind of seems like it's a little bit more on the surface, but this visualization really shows you how deep within the body this goes. So the psoas, the spirit muscle, when we go into fight or flight, when we go into shock, when we start this process, when the siren, the amygdala function fires and tells the body, hey, something's wrong. the first muscular reaction we have is the psoas tightens. It squeezes the kidneys. And yin essentially massages the 5 vital organs. So it's a beautiful way of alkalining that part of the body a little bit more. And the psoas release that we had in part 2, I'll just kind of walk you through it a little bit here, but we will do this again in January. So we softened the psoas first by taking a crocodile pose or a belly down shavasana, where you lay down on your belly and you allow the forehead to rest on the back of the palms. Your legs are flat behind the body. Your ankles can be turned outward to soften the low back. We paused there for a while, and then we shifted into half frog, which you can look up all of these poses online if you want to walk yourself through this at home. And the half frog position on each side allowed the psoas to stretch and soften. And then for the last minute of the frog hold, we brought the torso up onto the forearms in a Sphinx pose and rested the forehead on a block. And that was just to deepen that softening sensation for the last minute of the hold. And then after that, we came into the psoas release. So with the psoas release, we had a block, a yoga block, and then a bolster on top of the block, and then a strap going around the top of the back and then around one of the knees. Okay, so we released the right side first. So whichever side you're releasing of your psoas, the opposing knee is in the strap. So we had the strap first around our backside and around the left knee. And then we laid back on the bolster and block right under the hips. So some people were up a little too high and slid off the bolster. That's when you know you need to remove the block and just kind of sit on the bolster with your hips, and try not to have the bolster too far down on the thighs or too far up into the back. You want it directly under the glutes here so that you get that opening through the psoas. And then we just goal posted the arms open and held that for about 5 minutes. After that, we came into a butterfly fold forward off of our bolster to just kind of let that rest for a moment before moving into the left side, where we then took the strap around the right knee, let the left leg fall long, and then came all the way down onto the bolster and the block. So I'm giving you that information just in case you want to try any of that at home. I would encourage you to look up half frog Sphinx pose variation, and then that psoas release I can go through with you in January. Okay, so I'm really sorry that you guys missed out on that, but hopefully you'll be able to touch on that again in January with me. So we finished out this particular lecture and discussion with these journal prompts on your last page of your packet. What parts of myself are currently at war with one another? What is the major conflict that I am currently experiencing in my life? Where do I create misunderstandings in my life? So just another way to kind of get to know yourself a little bit better. Some of these journal questions are designed to just help you kind of go inward and build that interoception. Other than that, we took questions and a lot of people got an opportunity to speak. The 3 Wisdom Realms meditation was about 10 minutes. We had a 5-10 minute break where we set up for our yin practice and adjusted our straps. And then we went through that yin series that I told you about: crocodile pose, half frog, adding in the Sphinx variation with half frog for 1 minute, coming back down to crocodile pose for a minute, and then coming into half frog on the left side for about 4 minutes, adding an extra minute with the Sphinx pose variation, and then coming into the psoas stretch on each side with a folded butterfly in between. And then we laid back for final shavasana. So that was the entire experience on Friday night. We've had about an hour of discussion here. So that hour and a half that you're missing is all that juice. But at least you have the lecture portion and you'll know kind of where we're headed on Friday night, if you guys are all still coming. And don't be afraid to email me if you have any questions that are questions that you don't want to ask in a public setting, and I'll do my best to answer them as best as I can. If not, I will see you all on Friday. And I am so excited for this conclusion at Hadasana, part 3. So next week in our part 3, we're going to be going over, we have the 8 C's of self-energy. We're gonna do a dyad meditation, which a lot more meditating for part 3. A dyad meditation, self-energy. We're gonna go through dukkha, the first noble truth. And then we're going to have our 3 methods for awakening through suffering, where we practice a Tonglen meditation, which is giving and receiving. And then we're also gonna go into a dukkha meditation as well, along with journal prompts. And then when I did this on Sunday, this part 3, we only were able to have a short yin practice at the end because this class had a lot more meditation in it, but I'm hoping to still get a yin practice in for you guys at the end of part 3 next week. So have a great rest of your week. I hope this video finds you well. If you have any issues or problems, please let me know, okay? Have a nice rest of your day.